I came across an unusual object made of wood, leather, and metal, featuring a large funnel-shaped base. At first glance, it resembles a tool like a bellows, possibly something used for a fireplace or a forge. This item is a Bellows foghorn, a manually operated nautical signaling device, once used aboard ships to emit loud warning blasts in foggy conditions. It works by compressing air through a leather bellows and forcing it through a metal horn fitted with a vibrating reed, producing a deep, far-carrying sound. These devices were especially common during the 19th and early 20th centuries, before electric and compressed air horns became the norm. Sailors used them to alert other vessels of their presence when visibility was poor, helping to prevent collisions at sea. Early models looked like oversized fireplace bellows, made of wooden boards and leather. The user would manually squeeze the handles to push air through a brass horn. Later, designs were fully enclosed in wooden boxes with the internal bellows operated by a side crank or lever. These more advanced versions made it easier to produce a steady, continuous tone. Models like the British Triton horn or the American-made Lothrop's patent fog horn became standard equipment on warships, fishing boats, and even lifeboats. I found this small metal container in an old junk drawer. It has a hinged lid, ornate engravings, and no markings anywhere. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a 19th century traveling inkwell, a small, portable ink container. These inkwells were designed for people who needed to write on the go. They became especially popular during the Victorian era, when letter writing was essential and long-distance travel became more common. The American Civil War further increased demand for leak-proof ink containers, as soldiers used them to write orders and send letters from the field. Many traveling inkwells featured spring-loaded lids, screw caps, or even rubber gaskets to prevent ink from leaking during rough travel. One of the earliest United States patents for a travel ink bottle dates to 1892, and companies like Waterman quickly adapted these ideas to support the growing fountain pen market. I found this unusual item while cleaning up my father's workshop. It's made of green plastic with two metal wheels at the bottom that have gear-like teeth. Any idea what it is? What you found is a frame wire crimper, a specialized tool used in beekeeping to tighten the thin wires that run across wooden honeycomb frames. When building or repairing a beehive frame, a beekeeper stretches wires across the frame to support the wax foundation, a thin sheet of beeswax imprinted with a honeycomb pattern that guides the bees as they build. Without support, this delicate wax sheet could sag, warp, or even collapse under the weight of bees and honey, especially in hot weather. Running this crimper along the wire puts a series of zigzag crimps into it, which shortens and tightens the wire instantly. The tension helps keep the foundation flat and strong, preventing it from sagging or breaking. I saw these rusty metal discs with vertical spikes on the roof of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. They're about the size of a hand, and there are many of them spread evenly across the dome. Does anyone know what they are? What you found are candle holders, metal plates with vertical spikes mounted across the dome of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. These fixtures, often mistaken for bird deterrents, were actually used to hold thousands of candles and torches during major religious feast days. Each spike acted as a pricket, holding a candle or lantern upright against the surface of the dome. This system was part of a long-standing tradition of illuminating St. Peter's with real flames. On nights like the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul, hundreds of workers, known as the San Pietrini, would climb the roof and dome of the basilica, lighting more than 5,000 candles and lanterns one by one. As night fell, the basilica would gradually begin to glow, and at a signal, often the tolling of a bell, a second, more intense wave of torches would ignite all at once, turning the dome into a brilliant crown of fire. The last full candle-lit illumination took place in 1930. The tradition came to an end due to safety concerns, the increasing risk of fire, and the arrival of modern electric lighting. My buddy found this strange old wooden contraption at a swap meet. It has a long tapered arm and a round wooden plate beneath it, all mounted on a wooden bench. Does anyone know what this is? What your friend picked up is a 19th century lever cheese press, a traditional tool once used on farms to compress cheese curds and remove whey. This type of press was a staple of rural dairy production long before factory-made cheese became common. It worked on a simple mechanical principle. A mold filled with curds was placed beneath a wooden pressing plate, and the long lever arm was pulled down or weighted to apply pressure. This forced out the excess moisture, helping the curds bond into a solid wheel of cheese and extending its shelf life. Similar designs were used for centuries across Europe and America, with regional variations. In the Netherlands, for example, ornately painted lever presses were often given as wedding gifts. In the United States, lever-style cheese presses were widely used throughout the 1800s, particularly in dairy-rich states like New York, Vermont, and Wisconsin. One of the earliest United States patents for a cheese press was issued in 1821. What is this vintage device with a grid of numbered buttons and a hand crank? We found it while deaccessioning items from our Historical Society's archive, but there's no date or maker plate on it. Does anyone know what it is or what it was used for? This is a Monroe mechanical calculator, most likely a Model L or a similar variant, produced sometime between the 1930s and 1950s. Before electronic calculators came along, these hand-cranked machines were essential tools in offices, laboratories, banks, and government agencies for performing basic arithmetic. The layout you see, with vertical columns of digit keys from 1 to 9 and a crank on the side, was designed to speed up data entry and reduce errors. After entering a number using the keys, the operator would turn the crank to carry out the calculation. All the results appeared on the mechanical dials at the top of the machine, and the device could even ring when certain thresholds were crossed. Monroe calculators were widely used in American businesses throughout the mid-20th century, and even played a role during World War II, assisting with logistics and ballistic calculations. I saw this strange squash racket at a thrift store. It's made of wood and has a weird wooden frame or clamp around the head. What is this thing? This is a wooden racket press, a clamping device that was once essential for players using wooden squash, tennis, or badminton rackets. These presses became common in the late 19th century, around the time lawn tennis began gaining popularity. Players quickly discovered that wooden rackets could twist or bend if not properly stored, so manufacturers developed presses to hold the racket's head in a flat, stable position. By the early 1900s, companies like Spalding, Wright, and Ditson and Dunlop were producing versions for both casual players and professionals. The design was simple but effective. You'd place the racket head between two wooden boards and tighten screws at the corners. This kept the frame flat and protected. One notable 1930 patent by Spencer Flower introduced a lighter frame design that became especially popular on both sides of the Atlantic. I saw this Hummer on the highway in Georgia. What caught my eye was the strange metal object mounted on the roof. It's clearly bolted on, not just strapped down. Does anyone know what this is? What you're looking at is a telescopic antenna mast, a specialized communications device that extends vertically to raise antennas, cameras, or sensors high above a vehicle. These masts have been used since the mid-20th century in everything from TV news vans to emergency command vehicles, military communications trucks, and even amateur radio setups. The goal is to get a signal source or receiver up high to improve line of sight and range. They can operate pneumatically, using air pressure to lift each section, or mechanically with winches or manual clamps. I found this unusual wooden rack in the basement of my 1901 home. The top and base are held with small screws, while the rest is joined with dovetails. Any idea what it is? What you found is a vintage wooden magazine or newspaper rack. The style resembles what was historically known as a Canterbury, a low-standing rack originally designed in 18th century England to hold sheet music, and later adapted for books and magazines. The multiple wooden dowels were meant for draping or stacking reading materials without creasing them, and the flat top could even serve as a small side table. I spotted a man at the airport carrying this strange, dome-shaped case. It looks unusually bulky and has a unique shape. Does anyone know what this case is for? This is a cowboy hat travel case, often called a Western hat can. It's shaped to fit the tall crown and wide brim of a Western-style hat, protecting it from being crushed, bent, or damaged during transit. These cases have been around since the mid-20th century and are a common sight in rodeo and ranching communities. Inside, The hat is suspended on internal supports, and some models include brackets, ventilation slots, or compartments for small accessories. High-end cowboy hats can be quite expensive, sometimes costing several $100s or more. I saw this street performer playing a strange metallic instrument that looks like an upside-down steel drum. He was tapping it with his hands, and it made these soft, melodic tones. What is this instrument called? What you saw is called a hang, a unique hand-played percussion instrument invented in Switzerland in the year 2000. It's shaped like a flying saucer and made from specially treated steel, with a central dome and several tone fields arranged around it. The musician gently taps these tone fields with their hands to produce rich, melodic notes that blend rhythm and harmony. Despite often being called a hang drum, the creators prefer simply hang, which means hand in the Bernese German dialect. The hang was developed by Felix Rohner and Sabine Scharer of Panart Hangbauerg, who had previously worked on Caribbean-style steel drums. Only a few thousand original hang instruments were ever made between 2001 and 2013. Panart eventually stopped producing them, but the design inspired an entire family of similar instruments, now known as handpans. I saw this large white attachment labeled Airhead mounted on the passenger side window of an old Volkswagen wagon. It looks like a barrel with a mesh opening facing forward, almost like a jet intake. Is it some kind of air filter? What you've found is a vintage automotive swamp cooler, a simple, low-tech air conditioner that was popular in the United States before built-in air conditioning systems became standard. It mounts to the passenger side window and uses nothing but airflow and water to cool the car's interior. As the car moves, hot outside air is forced into the front of the unit, where it passes over a water-soaked lining. That evaporation cools the air, and the now moist, cooler air is channeled directly into the cabin. These devices were especially popular from the 1930s through the 1950s, particularly in hot, dry climates like the American Southwest. They didn't require electricity, refrigerants, or any mechanical parts, just a full water tank and a bit of forward motion. Brands like Thermador, Allstate, and Firestone sold thousands of them, and they were a familiar sight on desert highways. In the last video, I asked you to guess what this small aluminum object might be used for. Everyone had great guesses, and many of you got it right. This item is an essential oil inhaler. A piece of cotton soaked in essential oil is placed inside, then you simply take a deep breath. Some oils are used to relieve symptoms like nausea, dizziness, or nasal congestion. Thank you to everyone who participated and shared your guesses. A special shout out to Robert Redland for being the first to correctly identify it. All right, it's time for another mystery item. Take a look at this small metal object shaped like a hammer. What do you think it's used for? Leave your guesses in the comments, and I'll reveal the answer in the next video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Your support motivates me to create more videos. See you next time.